Hey guys, welcome back to the Guiding Tides podcast. I'm Jessica, and today we're going to be speaking about mindsets and schemas. Mahesh, kick it off.
Thanks, Jessica. I want to summarize this very quickly because I don't want to get caught up on definitions and giving a quick Psychology 101 class. All right? The meat of it is us focusing on what we've been building upon from the first episode. We're trying to focus on how to remove the stigma and the negative views of people seeking help when they're struggling with their mental health. So our first episode, we talked about fight or flight. Then we talked about the most common issues that people deal with, which is anxiety disorders and panic disorders. Our third episode, we talked about focusing on coping skills. So today, we're going to talk about schemas and mindsets. Now, schema, if you Google it, there are a bunch of different schemas. And schema basically means your structure, your construct of how you perceive information and how you rely on that information. So when you get new information, you build upon the old information you got and you create little files in your head of how to act. Now, a reference point, there's this guy named Jean Piaget, this famous psychologist, back in 1923, he was talking about this concept of schemas, and he was looking at children, and he was looking at how children develop their vocabulary. And when you look at your kids, or if you notice kids around you, and you see they start developing communication when they're toddlers, when you're playing peekaboo, that is communication. When you do peekaboo, and this little infant starts giggling and laughing, they anticipate that laughter. They know they're going to giggle. They know they're going to laugh along with you when you start playing the game again and again and again. They get used to that game. As they develop, they start developing vocabulary, sentence structure, phrases, and they rely on that. We all rely on that as we evolve. So as we learn new vocabulary, and as we come into new situations and circumstances, we apply that knowledge to future settings. So if I go to a restaurant when I'm a kid and my parents scold me like, hey, get your elbows off the table. Hey, use the cutlery. What are you doing? I start learning, oh, I'm in a restaurant. I need to act a certain way, act prim and proper. I can apply that to different restaurants. I'm not going to be taught again how to act, how to have etiquette. When you're walking into some building, you leave the door open, you hold the door open for somebody behind you. It's not just that building, but whenever you walk into a building, you apply that knowledge. That's your schema. It's a very simple example, but here's where it gets complex. When we start developing our schemas, our perception, they're not always correct. Sometimes we have maladaptive schemas. And I want to focus on those schemas specifically for this episode because it applies with the struggle of addressing our mental health.
Otherwise, I'd have nothing to talk about tonight.
We gotta have something for Jeff. Otherwise, what are we doing here? We pay him by the hour. So,
I wish.
So along the schemas, right? We got to look at mindsets. Now, we're just using synonyms because some people will be like, I never heard of the term schema. What the hell is that? Right? But mindsets, that's a term that's been used here and there. People might be more aware of. So your mindset is your framework of what you look at and how you view life. You might view your politics through a certain mindset. You might view religion through a certain mindset because your mindset is your construct of how you see the world around you. Now, with mental health, your mindset is going to be the framework of how you're currently living. And when you start realizing that you want to make a change in where you are, you have to look at your mindset. You have to look at your schema. You have to look at your framework as to how you got there. And that is a painful process of putting your ego aside and being so vulnerable and raw when you start peeling back the layers of how did this schema get constructed that I felt it was okay to live my life the way I was as an alcoholic, as an abusive husband, as someone who stole from my parents so I could score my heroin, as someone who justified mugging somebody at the Quincy Tea because I wanted a party. That's my schema. We can justify anything because that's our schema. That's our framework. So the maladaptive schemas is going to be more the focus. Now, if you Google this stuff, there's a bunch of other schemas out there.
How do you even spell schema?
It starts with an S.
SCHEMA, schema, used in a sentence.
Yeah. There you go. Wow.
First spelling bee you've ever
that's-
won.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Actually, my phone underneath.
We're gonna test Jeff later to see if he
Remember
remembers
it?
this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna test his ADHD. All right, and see where he is.
I mean, one thing that's instantly resonating, listening to you talk and thinking about this, not to go right to a controversial, societal figure or whatever, but a Kanye interview where I can't remember which one it was, but he wasn't doing well.
Shocker.
But he talked about this, being in public and, you see a little kid standing on the table. You say, hey, don't act like that. And he ties it into I think we're living in a simulation or everything's a matrix, but we build constructs. His message was we build constructs into children, and it's why are you acting that way? We're all actors acting the role that we get assigned to play. Is that hitting?
Yeah, I think so. I can't believe we're relying on Kanye as the reference point, but yeah, he nailed it. We are acting. We are functioning within a societal. We're functioning in a society that has roles for us. We do have roles. I have a role as a father. I have a
We
role.
have to work. We have to have a role at work.
Yeah, you have to fulfill certain obligations that we've taken on, right? I mean, it could be as an employee, as a parent, as a member of society, and we work within the constructs of the norms of that culture.
Yeah.
Right? So that is a schema. That is a construct. But that construct can change. And that's what I want to get to with this episode, is the fact that when you realize that life ain't going that great right now, and I got to do something to change things around. What you got to do is when you start realizing that you're going to seek help to address your issues, one of these steps is looking at your schema in therapy and your mindset, because your view of how you're perceiving the world needs to change. And that's scary as hell.
Yeah.
Okay? Because in my personal life, and I look at the people I work with, when you are this person and you want to be that person, there are some changes that need to happen in your life. Okay? And it could be your relationship with your parents. It could be relationships with your siblings. It could be, I got to get out of this house. It could be, I got to change my friend group. So that is the biggest one I've come across, that when I start realizing as a person that needs to make changes in my life, that if I'm going to change my friend group, who am I hanging with now? There might be a period where you're alone and you're trying to figure things out. And as you start evolving and you shed that skin like a snake and become this new person, there's a process of you don't know who you're becoming.
And that's scary.
That's scary. That's frightening.
For me, it's scary because I don't know if I'm going to get what I want. I don't know if I'm going to be safe, if I'm going to be okay.
Right.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is a crazy thing.
And if those schemas, if those, mindsets or constructs or I guess even attitude, I keep thinking the phrase attitude is everything.
Attitude is everything.
And
It is mindset schema. Yeah.
I can reflect on times where I brought a piss poor attitude into therapy and I got I wasted months of my life talking to somebody.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing what he or she said, because my attitude sucked. My belief systems were
Unaligned.
Thank you. Yep.
Wow. Jessica, that was gold. The unaligned. She says stuff every once in a while. I was like, where'd that come from? Yeah, you have to align your schema and your mindset along with where you're headed. And it has to be in this trajectory that you can see. And you will be challenged by your peers. You'll be knocked down by your family, because a lot of stuff that's going to happen to you as you're making these changes is going to conflict with the loved ones around you.
Sure.
I mean, think about it. I mean, think about you guys with the journeys that you've gone through, right? And as you have made changes in your lives, have you ever been told by someone close to you, like, who are you? You're not the same.
I wouldn't say that so much as somebody's called me personally on it, but people definitely act different. That's for damn sure. I mean, that's really all sides of my family. Once I started switching up, once I started getting onto this journey of mental health, healing myself, I get looks.
Right.
I get spoken to differently. I was in church recently, and a lot of the family was there. I thought it was amazing. The priest mentioned something about mental health awareness month. So, obviously he kind of had to
Struck
do
a
it.
chord.
Not only did I see, but I felt the heads whipping me, and I'm like, maybe I'm not the only one that needs that. You know what I mean? Back to what you're saying with the schema and, people looking at you differently. I almost feel like they'll look at you differently because some of these people might have helped construct your schema.
Absolutely.
And that's a hard thing to understand. You have everything go wrong, or you feel this type of way in, certain situations. You learned that at a young age.
Yeah.
Now you have to unlearn that. You have to recognize that as an issue, but it's something you've always known.
Right.
So now you have to say, okay, this thing that I know, it's not right. It's hurting. So now you take a step back and undo it and build something new.
I would challenge that same person that's concerned about, their family, their people close to them. How many of those people do you wonder are dying to see you change, something different? And it might be, it might be uncomfortable for them at first, but they're going to fall into alignment with it.
Yeah.
They're going to see that this is the best version of you that you've brought forth before,
Some people aren't going to like that though.
Yeah, hopefully.
Sure. Hopefully they do. But there's a lot of people, I can tell you for certain, I know people, and I won't name them, but there's certain people in my life that don't like where I'm at right now.
Oh, yeah.
For one reason or another. And
yeah, they're waiting for you to fail, man. They are waiting for you to face plant.
There's some days I go so dark that I get close to failing. I get close to fucking it all up.
Yep.
But I won't, just because I want to see them live in the fact that they're living in a world where I'm succeeding.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's family, that's friends.
Yeah.
So I'd love to stare at the camera and say, fuck them, but I don't know if that's a message I want to promote.
Even if it's just a catalog of interesting, great exchanges from us on a plethora of topics or whatever, I'll be happy with that. That's pretty cool. Thinking that I could accomplish and take part in accomplishing something like that. But to think that a specific group of people or somebody going through it isn't going to stumble across this and find actual, relatable, tangible content that they can apply to their lives right away, I find it hard to believe that won't happen. How the internet's too big. There's too many people. Like, this will help someone, and even if it just helps a small, unnoticeable few, I'll feel good knowing I took part in this.
That's
our people that have reached out. I mean, everyone reposting. It's been huge. That's what's going to help make this successful. But it's not about the views. It's not about the likes. It's not about becoming this huge thing. It's the few people so far that are reaching out and thanking us for doing this, for having the courage across all of us. Friends of mine, their wives are reaching out and they're like, Jess, like, I love that she's on the show talking about postpartum and, real life stuff that women go through. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping that it's going to reach our audience and they'll take action on it and not feel isolated. That's our intent. But I'm not going to pull any punches on this. That you cannot watch this podcast and go, okay, I want to go find a therapist. And life will be hunky dory.
Mm-hmm.
This shit hurts.
Yeah.
This is life, and depending on where you are in your trajectory, if you're in your early 20s and you're still living in mom's basement and you're trying to figure things out, okay. You're a lot luckier than that guy who has to go to work, or that woman that has to go to work and come home as a single parent or as a couple who's in a dysfunctional relationship that doesn't talk to their spouse, whose kids don't talk to them because they're ashamed of them, or that's their perception. And you're dealing with your own demons. And on top of that, you still have to deliver. And you do, maybe begrudgingly, maybe fighting through it, right? And you're just in a world of misery, and you're starting to realize, I got to change this. Hopefully, you'll start seeing that, right? And does it happen overnight? Hell no.
It doesn't.
No.
It's a multi-step process, and the fact that you're saying that, I'm going to take the mic for a quick second.
There you go, brother.
This is a real podcast, real people, real shit. As you all know, I don't know if you know, I'm back on leave again from work. I am going through another mental health program right now. Part of the reason I bring that up is because I know there's a lot of people that are watching to kind of see, oh, what's Smith up to? What's going on? Having a lot of struggles with my panic attacks, but I recognize it. I know there's help out there. So I'm right here in front of everybody putting that work in. So I just want to put that out there. Like I'm unafraid to say that I'm back at a treatment facility. I'm still a husband, still a father, still a friend, still doing the podcast.
There you go.
Doing my thing.
Yeah.
I'm a normal human being. Just need a little bit more help. That's all.
Where do you get the drive and the fuel to engage in that fight?
For me personally, and I'm happy you asked that, because when I was doing my intake at this facility, that was one of the things in the 3-hour biopsych we did. They said, what's your drive? What's your why? Why are you here?
Yeah.
Well, look, it's easy to throw it away and hurt myself, or, slip to a world of drugs and alcohol, or worse. My why are my wife and my 2 daughters. That's first and foremost. That's my first line of defense, always and foremost. But it's everything else. It's my friends. It's this podcast. It's things that I've built in my life, people that I've put on my back that require me to carry them. I know that I have to have the strength to carry them. All the shit that I have, it's my shit. It's never going to go away. The past traumas, everything that I endured.
Oh, yeah.
I just need to get a little bit stronger, because I'm always going to need to carry that shit.
Yeah.
And that's where I get that fight from, And, at the end of the day, I feel, because I'm punitive towards myself, I'm supposed to fail.
Well,
Yeah.
It's easier to tell yourself that you're going to fail.
Well, of course. I want to beat the statistics, so to say.
Of course, and you're going to.
So I just wanted to take that to explain, because, what you were saying, I'm like, all right, now's a good opportunity, that I'm in the same fight that you are all in. You're just on the other side of the camera. That's the only difference between you and I.
Now I'm going to take the mic for a hot second. How can you, Christian, you have a family, you have responsibilities, you have, how can you do that and get help for what you're struggling with? Doesn't that look like leaving, you know what I'm dancing?
No, it's
Selfish? Are you saying is it selfish?
No, I wasn't going there, but
I don't know.
Well, even to your question, though, of being selfish,
Mm.
if you stay in your shit too long and you keep going through the macho guy stuff, or
Oh, yeah.
kind of push through bulldoze mentality, eventually you're going to be irreparable. That's how I feel. That's why I'm getting on it now.
unbearable along the way.
Say something, do something that you're not going to be able to come back from.
Yep.
So you need to compartmentalize. The program that I'm in, it's very flexible. With the hours, there's different options throughout the day. So I can't work right now because it's during the day, but I can still take care of my family. When I come home, when I open the door and I have 2 dogs running at me and 2 little girls running around, they don't see that. I don't say, Daddy's home from therapy, I'm crazy. No, they just get Dad. And if anything, they get a better version.
Yes, they do.
I keep hanging on. I keep going to work. I walk in and I'm like,
Give me a minute.
come in and start swinging. But they're not getting the best version of me.
Yeah.
I don't owe the best version of me to my boss or to people who really don't care. Not that my boss doesn't care, but you know what I mean?
No, I hear you.
In your life.
Right.
You have to be the best possible version for yourself first. And then the people that rely on you. That's your kids. That's your wife. That's somebody you're taking care of. Those are your friends, your people.
But that jumping point that you have, that you realize that is going to be different than where other people are that are watching this.
Absolutely.
And this is, and I go back to emphasizing that this is going to hurt and it's going to take time.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't want anyone to have the false illusion of like, well, Christian said, you know,
no,
X, Y, and Z, and like, that's where I need to start.
Yeah.
And I mean, dude, there are people that are watching this on their phone right now, curled up in the pajamas that they wore. Today's Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Same pajamas that they put on Sunday.
Shitty weather.
You know, and just curled up in a hellhole watching this, trying to find motivation to leave that bedroom. You know, and I'm not exaggerating.
And that's where when I started to create Fascia Terrors, that's where that was born. Not because I thought it sounded cool or it was going to sell, but no battles won in bed.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care where you come from socially, economically, anywhere.
Right.
Whether you're by yourself in a little sublet apartment and you're curled up on a Thursday night, or if you're in a mansion. I mean, mental health affects everybody, but no fucking battles won in bed.
Yeah.
No.
So where can someone go? What are some actions people can take that are like, okay, I've got some maladaptive belief systems. I'm willing to challenge them. What next?
I think finding, and that's Google, right? You can get the answer like that. Looking up, and you don't have to do schema-based therapy. It worked for me. That's currently something I'm going to be working on deeper. Jump online, reach out to us. I'm sure one of the four of us can help steer any of you in the correct direction. But look into that, understand that, and practice that kind of therapy. I've done many therapies over the years, and it's been the same thing. You know, I go in, I talk about, you know, what's kind of current. It's a trauma dump bitch fest. That feels good sometimes, but we're not addressing root causes. We're not really getting into the meat of it. So when the facility Jess and I were in, they did a lot of schema-based work. There was some CBT as well.
There's a lot of CBT, but I feel like it was more schema-based.
So when they first brought the name schema up, I'm like,
What the hell is
the
that?
hell is a schema?
Yeah.
I want one. You know, and then
Oh, and do you remember our list? They were like, mine was at least 8 schemas long.
Sounds like a skin condition.
schemas make you itchy. But what was the most notable to you with that? Because I remember when we looked at ours, we're like, holy hell.
Can I pull it up on my
Of
phone?
course, yeah.
Because it'll just be easier for me to look at it.
Definitely. And I think Jess and I at this point we're talking about the maladaptive schemas because that's what we learned.
So I think one that originates with you is self-sacrifice. So that's one of them. Pessimism. I'm super pessimistic. I can't say the word.
Mhm.
But oops, I missed it. And core beliefs. Like I always said that I can't trust anybody or I'm defective. That's kind of just like how it was growing up. So I learned very crazy maladaptive schemas from a very young age. So like learning about them in that facility and kind of learning how to work through them. It's kind of crazy how you can kind of get on the other side.
So you guys, using what you were just talking about, being pessimistic.
Mm-hmm.
So you started taking layers back as to where you learned that behavior or where that construct came from.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you find that? Where did you find the root of that? Was that from childhood? Was that from your parents? Was that from...
It was probably from childhood.
Mm.
Definitely from childhood. Never feeling like I was good enough or, never doing well in school and then, being that disappointment to your parents.
Mm.
And then you kind of just learn from that, you can't, I'm not good enough. I can't achieve this. I'm never going to pass school. I'm never going to get to the next grade or I'm never going to pass Spanish,
Sure.
So, it started when I was little and it continued on with me up until I was 34 and I entered a facility and I learned all about different ways to work through them.
So that's what I wanted to ask you was that the first time you'd say in your life that you had the ability to challenge kind of your perception and your belief system?
100%.
Really?
Yeah, because at that moment, I was giving it my all.
I'm smiling because it's like, where organically do people get an opportunity to challenge, like that doesn't happen naturally throughout one's life, you know?
No, you have to really push yourself to want to get better and want to learn more about yourself. The scariest part was learning about me, like who I truly am like down to my core, like who I am. So it's a crazy journey, but I mean, I don't regret it for a second. Like, you said, how do you do it? How do you be a husband? How do you go to work? How do you do this? Granted, you're out of work, which is fine. I was out of work for 5.5 months, almost 6 months. I was able to take a medical leave, which was great, but some people don't have that option.
Right.
So
that wasn't I was unemployable when I went to treatment, let alone
so we don't confuse anybody here, though. You don't necessarily, not everybody has to take time off of work. If you truly can't because you don't have, if financially you cannot do it, there are options. There are night programs.
Yes, there are.
For myself, where I'm at, I need that little extra intensive level at this point. But there are options. So don't be shied away from the fact of, I'm not going to make my bills, and then you're going to spiral and ruminate in those thoughts. So therefore, I'm not getting help. I just want to clarify that.
There's so many ways to get help, and there's so many things, like even during the week, on the weekends, that you can join to do.
Yeah.
And even reaching out to a therapist or your PCP to kind of get that ball rolling.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mahesh, it started when I was younger, and it kind of trickled on throughout my whole life.
When you're going through that journey of peeling back and learning that, oh my God, I can't believe this started when I was 7 or 10. And then you start looking at how you were raised. And it's not a blame game. I'm not blaming anybody's parents or, culture or whatever, because that's a quick go-to. Life happens. Okay, life happens, and here you are developing your schemas, but understanding why you think a certain way matters.
Yeah.
Understanding that, I think, feeds into understanding your fears.
Yeah.
And a lot of our mental health that we want to change is based on our fears.
Fears are wild.
Because when you look at mental health, there are a lot of good things going on in our lives. We're like, oh my God, I'm so sick of being happy. Like, no one says that. And you're not going to change that.
Oh.
Right.
Right? You're not going to change the construct of like, oh, I feel so loved. Like, no, that's the good stuff. So, but that's part of your mental health, but you want to change the things that created that fear that's woven into you, into your soul. It's like, it's so old that you can't even recognize it anymore. It's just like fused into you. And once you start peeling that back,
Though you have to find that dog to be able to do that.
right?
But you also have to be able to feed that dog.
What do you mean?
To feed it?
Yeah.
So like
To feed? Or
no, to feed, like
eating.
feed food, chomp chomp. You can have the drive, but if you don't take action and actually like do something about it and continue to do something about it, that's what I mean by feeding. Then it's not gonna work.
Yeah, you're
So
100% right.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that. So you're trying to feed the process of addressing that fear?
Yes.
Of having the dog in the fight, but you
Gotcha.
feed that dog in the fight so he's strong enough to have that fight. I think that's kind of what just formed right there.
Yes.
Oh,
Just in my own terms.
Yeah, okay, I keep saying that.
all right.
Because
I'm tracking.
So it starts to have that dog in the fight to be able to be like, all right, enough's enough. I'm doing something. I'm putting my foot down. I'm taking a stand. Whatever you have to say to yourself, you're pumped up.
Yeah.
But yeah, you gotta fuel it. And I think that's where I went south with this current journey, I'll call it, was I had the dog in the fight. I got in. I thought I was good enough. And I'm like, all right, I'm back. I'm good. I didn't feed that dog.
Yeah.
And then I seen it all kind of crash back and emotionally became hungover every day, if you will. So yeah, feed the dog dress.
There's been a lot of times where I had the drive to do something, took the action, found a new provider, found a new group, and didn't like them. Thought they rubbed me the wrong way.
I've gone through so many different therapists.
Unfortunately, though, I called it quits. I threw in the flag. I said, hey, I tried. I made the effort, and this isn't working out.
You didn't feed the dog?
Oh man,
Correct.
I'm telling you, like
We're gonna make that a team.
working in this industry as a therapist. Therapists are like contractors. Okay, when you get a guy coming over and you want to redo your bathroom, and you're like, okay, so what's the price? And if they're looking you up and down and not the bathroom, they're assessing what they're going to charge you,
Good point. That's a great analogy.
right? And just because they got a plumber's license doesn't mean they're a good plumber.
Yep.
Okay? So you will have to go through a series of people until you find that person that you connect with. You know, I have to emphasize this. This is not an easy journey. This is not a one and done, rodeo. You will, once you start engaging in dealing with your mental health, bro, put your seatbelt on because it's going to be a hell of a ride. And once you commit to it, once you say it out loud that you want to take care of your future, that you want to take care of your kids, that you want to progress in your profession and stop just eating garbage that you've been fed all your life, that, and getting patted on the head. And, believing that schema, that construct that, I guess I'm just this guy. Oh, poor me. Enough.
I love the boohoo.
Oh my God, enough. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And I say that to my clients, like, all right already.
I said it before,
No.
and I'll say it
Go.
again. Like it's okay to do that. You can run that
You could do that for a bit.
for a hot second, but
Yeah, it gets old.
No, it gets real fucking old.
Dude, it gets so old. Your friends are done.
Yeah, they don't.
Your family's done.
Yeah.
Everyone's done. And here you are. Oh, yeah, but my childhood. Okay, yeah, I know. Yes.
We got to grow from it. Let's go.
There's trauma. Yes.
Dude.
Okay, you're still here. You're still breathing. What are you going to do? Right? But I don't want people to watch this podcast saying, well, I watched the podcast and they said, go see a therapist and like everything's fine now. No, dude, it's going to suck. It's going to hurt. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Like, for instance, like right now, this week is it's a tough week for me.
It sucked.
Yeah. And,
That is what sucks.
this is the week that last year I had my first mental breakdown. So I'm like, this is like the year mark that everything started for me, my journey.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of mixed emotions this week on how I'm feeling and, reflecting back to where I was a year ago today. I was 86 pounds. I was depleted as a human being. Yes, 86 pounds.
That's like my left leg.
And just being on the other side of that now, I still feel like I'm 86 pounds. I haven't gained much weight, but we're getting there. I'm working on it. Being on the other side of that now, I can say that fight is so worth it. Like never giving up and continuing on no matter how hard it is, putting in that work and really trying to change the way your whole mindset was once to something completely new is a crazy journey.
God.
You right now, so taking this Jess, take the year ago Jess. What if that version a year ago heard you talking right now? You were talking to her.
She would be like, how the hell do you do it? How do I get
Did you
there?
feel like you couldn't do it?
Yeah, because at that moment I didn't think that I could until, I finally surrendered.
Took the first step.
Yeah, I surrendered.
What was that? I want to really look at that.
How I surrendered?
That moment when you surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
That moment where, so you're saying surrendered. I'm looking at like you're fully committed to.
Yeah.
Okay. But the language is important.
Mm-hmm.
So you're surrendering to. You're vulnerable. You're giving into this process.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also a commitment to.
Oh yeah, it's a huge commitment.
Right. So that drive, what's fueled me a lot of my life is my anger.
Yeah.
That I'm so sick and tired of hearing, views on who I am or
I think when
where I am. Or
Christian first met me, how angry was I?
fucking scary. But use your anger. Use your anger. Look,
I had to use my anger to drive me for part of everything.
That moment when you decided to surrender / commit to this process,
Mm-hmm.
right? Could you expand on what that felt like? Was there a release of like,
I think once I finally spoke to my mom and kind of caved and said, like, something's wrong, there was no going back.
you said it out loud?
I said it out loud.
Yeah.
So once, because I kept everything to myself.
Yes.
I just kind of shut my mouth, put my head down, and did what I had to do to get through the day. But once I came out, once I left work and like collapsed at work and work kind of saw me crack, and then I had no choice but to tell my mom that I left early because she had my daughter and she was wondering why, and I'm telling her I had a panic attack. I'm not well.
Yeah.
Boom. That was it. There was no, she was like, you call your doctor, you get your help, and you figure it the fuck out.
Right.
So once I opened up that door, there was no going back. And like failure in my eyes to my mom, like I didn't want to fail her. And I didn't want to fail my daughter because I didn't want her to feel like I failed her.
So those are our drives.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, those are your drives in your personal life and your struggle.
Yeah.
You know, and Christian, you were pointing out like your wife and your kids, you know, but like until we say it out loud, until we say that we need help out loud and put it out there for us to hear ourselves, we can follow that schema, that maladaptive schema, day in, day out, and have that internal dialogue of like, you suck, you piece of crap.
Punitive voice.
Punitive.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
we
that's
can
easy.
tear ourselves apart better than anybody else.
Yeah.
Right? And we have this internal dialogue going on and on about how worthless we are, how we're not. Look, you just suck, you know, but we suffer through silence and we work day in, day out, following that schema, that mindset, and we accept it. You know, we eat shit every day until we start saying it out loud that like, someone's got to give.
That's powerful, saying it out loud. That's what finally got me to get help, because for so long my wife was like, you know, you need help, you can't keep doing this, going back and forth, because she's seen, I guess, the real me. Not that I put a facade on for people, but she would see me at the end of the night. I'll run around putting the hat of the Joker on, jester.
Yep.
She's seen when I got home. When I leave, when I'm more younger, early 20s, I'd be at my friends' houses partying and whatnot, and I'd be laughing and joking and, you know, just being that guy.
Yeah.
Damn near every time, and not many of them know this, I would go back to my childhood home and I would just lose my mind. My wife, this was pre-kids and I think even pre-marriage, she would typically, if I wasn't home, she'd come find me, you know?
Yeah.
And then finally, 2 years ago, I got in front of the mirror. For me, I need to get in front of the mirror and I need to say it out loud. And I said to myself, you're not okay. You're fucked up. Like and you're fucking up. You know, we were getting ready to welcome our second daughter. And I'm like, this ain't it. I'm about to continue the cycles that my parents bestowed upon me, the shit that I grew up with.
Yep.
My schemas were about to get dropped onto them, and I wasn't going to let that happen. That's where I had to take that stand. Circle this back to, you know, schemas and, you know, making it so people can fully understand what we're saying. I still didn't comprehend what a schema was until a woman in group had said to us, I think it was a woman in group, somebody in group had said that schemas are lenses that we look at the world through. That resonated with me.
Wow.
You know, whether, you know, it's glasses or a camera lens. So in certain situations, those lenses automatically get put on.
Yep.
So again, to be like, wait a minute.
Even when you don't want them to, they do.
Right. So like you were talking about things when you were a kid, school or whatever, that automatically gets applied when you're in a place that feels like that place.
Mm-hmm.
For me, one of the ones, I mean, I had a whole list, but the one that I can really speak on, and you mentioned earlier, was the self-sacrifice. I used to go so far out of my way to fix other people's issues, absorb them as my own. I mean, I have family members that I've gotten so involved in their shit, more involved than them. I'm losing sleep. I'm not going to work the next day. I'm losing money. I'm sacrificing myself for them. And I call them at, 9, 10 in the morning. And they're like, oh, sorry, I was sleeping. I'm like, what the fuck? We're not supposed to be sleeping. And then I'm like, yes, why am I losing sleep if you're not losing sleep?
Tell you that all the time.
Right. And that's, I could find a jest with that stuff. I text her, things that are going on, and she's like, and I gotta let it go. Like, it's not, she
Not your monkey, not your zoo.
correct. But because of the way I grew up, my family dynamic, because of the abuse in my house, when I was young, there were things that were so out of my control. Hey, you came into my house when I was 3 years old. You've seen the conditions I lived in.
Yep.
I'm not sitting there making up a fucking story.
No.
I, at 3, 4, 5 years old, I wanted to fix things, but I couldn't. So that was such a vulnerable feeling. So as an adult, that translates into, I've been on the bus, or better yet, I stopped at one of the gas stations on the side of the highway over by Newton, and there was a kid that had a flat tire. And I was kind of like, not going to touch it, but deep down, I'm like, I'm getting involved. I know I am. He couldn't figure out how to change it, so I helped him change it. His fucking spare was flat. I'm like, okay, how can I help? So did what I could do. I'm like, just go over here, fill it up with air. He's like, excuse me, sir, could I Venmo you money? It doesn't take card. I need to hit the ATM, but I don't have. I'm like, all right, like that's, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to pull out 20. I'm just going to give it to this kid and that's it. Maybe he'll stop and hit a scratch ticket. I'm like, I want to get this wrapped up for him. I was owning it. And I had to be home to, help my wife with the kids. Her workday was ending. The nanny was preparing to go home. So it's like, I need to be home. But I got so absorbed in this shit. I went inside to pull money out of the ATM. The fucking ATM's broken. I'm like, oh. I get back in my vehicle and I'm on the middle of the highway. Like, it's not a convenience store I can just hit. And I look up the nearest one and it was like 13 minutes away. I'm like, all right, that's 13 there, 2 minutes in. That's, another 15 back. And I'm like, I can't do this. And then that set me back a half hour to still drive a half hour home. I'm like, I'm fucking my wife and kids at this point. I can't do that. So I was like, all right, I recognize because of the therapies I did that I self-sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, all right, I'm done. Like I put way more into the situation than I should have. But had I not done the therapy, learned about schemas, learned about the self-sacrifice, I thought I was just a good guy all these years. It's good to help out, but no, it derived from something. And it took my counselor, my therapist, highlighting that. This is why you do it. The punitive voice, Mahesh, that you were just talking about, if I don't do those things, I'm going to beat the shit out of myself.
Absolutely, man.
Because I didn't stop and help that person, or what if something happens to this family member because I didn't do this? You need to worry about yourself.
First and foremost, always worry about yourself.
That's hard, though.
There's a dangerous line. There's a dangerous line from being someone who wants to help somebody and then taking on the role as martyr.
I said to Jeff earlier today, and I know I texted it to you, and I want to share it with you, Mahesh, and everybody watching. For so long, I positioned myself as the rock in people's lives. We're done with that. I'm going to be the shoreline. The shoreline is weathered, but it's still standing. It's still there.
Yep.
So I'm weathered, but I'm still here for people that need it, but I can't be the fucking rock no more. For my wife and kids, I'll be anything they need me to be.
Right.
But for everybody else around me.
Yeah.
Because you deplete yourself.
I keep equating this, and I can't believe I kept missing this. I managed to make it 36, 37 years of my life without stepping foot with intent into a gym. And 3 years ago, I stepped on the scale, and the last time I was willing to step on the scale and look at it before I was actually willing to take some action, I weighed 297. I'm 5'10", 5'11"-ish. 297 did not look good on me. None of it was muscle.
297?
Yeah, this is pre-gym. I was almost 300 pounds. I believe I exceeded it before starting the journey that I embarked upon.
Never.
Yeah.
At that time, the idea of fitness, of working out, of dieting, exercising, I think I'm too far past that. In Ozempic, not to shout them out, like that wasn't an option, that wasn't around. Like,
No.
I took to fasting, intermittent fasting, and I eventually got into the gym, but back to like this, process, going through this, doing this, finding out who we are, finding out what our shortcomings are and what our obstacles are, and addressing them. It's a lot like hitting fitness goals. It doesn't happen overnight. I didn't drop down to I think I got as low as like 180, 185, which I looked very skinny, and I wasn't happy with that weight, but I lost over 100 pounds inside of a year.
You should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you. And I feel great about that accomplishment. I've made TikTok videos about it, and like, I'm proud of that. But to go back to me stepping off that scale, seeing the numbers 297, feeling hopeless, feeling like I'm too old, I can't turn this around. This is just who I am, and I'm just going to become a diseased, unhealthy person and die early or something. I wasn't willing to accept that. And if you're sitting at home and you're stuck in depression, you're riddled, your everyday life is riddled with anxiety, the events that happen to you, the pain that's been caused to you, to
nobody can take that away from you.
To no fault of your own. Those aren't unsurmountable things.
Yeah.
If, and I don't want to say if I can lose 100 pounds, you can heal, but think about that. No discipline with going to the gym, no understanding of nutrition. I grabbed on to a few simple things that were put in front of me. I started to get results. And then what helped me change the mindset was, that let thoughts like, well, this old guy that goes to the gym, like, he's got to still be going to the gym for a reason, and just simple education on that stuff, just coupled with the action to do something.
Yeah.
I eventually saw results, and the results, became measurable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to tie that into mental health, right? It's not an overnight thing. You don't just go to a counseling session one time or go to a facility once, clearly, and then you're good, you're healed. Yeah, no, it's setbacks after setbacks.
Something you have to keep coming back to. It's something you have to keep challenging. It's something you have to keep educating yourself on.
Yeah.
Healing's a lifelong process.
Yes, it is.
It's maintenance, right? So when we get to...
I like that, maintenance.
Yeah, because when I said before, you're moving from point A to point B. Okay, so now you're point B. Well, what the hell is C? What are you, stagnant?
That's how I feel
I
right
hit
now.
45, I'm like, okay,
Stagnant.
here I am at 45, and that's it? No. I'm looking at 50. I'll be 58 this summer. I'm killing it. I can't wait.
You look younger than both Jack and I.
It's the coconut oil, brother. Look, when we set goals for ourselves and we get used to the pattern of setting goals, you get a momentum going. It's like riding a bicycle, right? So, yeah, the first couple pedals, the pushes are hard. You're wobbling a little bit. You get some speed under you. You get a little comfortable, right? You get into the rhythm. That's life. So once we get to the point of maintaining our progress and we get into the rhythm of understanding, I got to pull back here. I need to avoid that. I need to move over here. This is my area of strength. This is definitely my area of weakness.
Even when, I just want to emphasize on something, even when people may not understand, if you know what I'm trying to say, like when you're setting those boundaries, when you're learning to set boundaries and when you're actually implementing your boundaries, you're not going to make everybody happy.
No.
Oh, I was so bad at that. I was so offensive with people about how, because it was like, I literally equated it to like life and death. If I don't set this boundary, like, I'm fucked.
But when you're in that journey of healing and all that, setting boundaries is a healthy thing.
Yes.
And don't feel as though you cannot set those boundaries because of certain people. Like, I've had to set boundaries with multiple people in my life that don't necessarily understand my boundaries.
Yes.
And it's very difficult, but I keep trying. So I just wanted to emphasize on that because
it's so funny because what you're saying here, I feel like is the reciprocal, is the flip of being the martyr. So when you're the martyr, you want to solve everybody's problems to avoid your own problems.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I got you. I'm here for you. Oh, yeah, don't worry about it, honey.
Yeah, those days are over.
Right. So here you are saving everybody else while your ship is sinking. And
I did that for a very long time.
But people get off on it. look at me suffering. That's okay. I got you.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a sick rush to being the martyr. And when we're working on our goals and we're starting to set limits with people and we're feeling like, oh, I don't want to upset mom and dad. Oh, I don't want to, my high school friends, they're going to miss me. Dude, get over yourself.
Yeah.
It's getting over yourself more so than
Yeah.
offending people when you set boundaries. Your true friends, your real family will back you up.
Of course they will.
They will surface to the top, right? And they'll be there for you, and they'll commend you, and they'll
Well, when you
reinforce
come from family that has a very different cultural background,
yeah.
Mahesh might be able to
Tell
speak
me-
on this.
Tell me more.
sometimes they don't understand those boundaries.
Yeah, I get, yeah. They have a hard time wrapping their heads around that.
But you
or
need to
admitting-
smash through them. Like you said,
Yeah.
you're first. Right before I just went on leave, I was toying with the idea for probably about 4 weeks. I didn't want to be perceived as weak by taking leave again. And then I'm like, you know what? And even doing the podcast, I'm like, I don't want to admit that. I kind of want to keep that hidden. But obviously, I came right out with that.
Yes.
My boss was really the one who kind of pushed me into this.
Oh my God.
He said to me, he's like, it's time to take a knee. He said, there's no weakness in that. You need to take a knee. He said, there's no doubt. I've watched you for the last 2 years. The amount of shit that you've been through, the amount you've been pillars for people. But I'm watching you and those pillars are starting to crack. He goes, it's not a matter of weeks, months, it's days before you just fall apart. Right. And so I'm like, all right, somebody else sees it now. I'm not doing a good job of faking the funk. And he said, and it was just like a hit me right in the chest. He said, you need to put your oxygen mask on first. And I was like,
Wow.
He said, you have a lot of people relying on you. Put that oxygen mask on. He's right.
Yeah.
And I'm tying that back to what you said there.
Mm-hmm.
And setting boundaries, that's a hard concept. It's easy in therapy when people say, you're going to set the boundary with mom and dad. Okay, great. Then you go to do it. And it's like, well, fuck you. Well, we didn't rehearse that in therapy. That's like,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, what if you just don't have the self-worth or the care for yourself to set boundaries? I'm not going to make myself uncomfortable or possibly offend you because I'm not shit anyways. Why would I
You
go
could
through
set
all
boundaries.
You're going to not react to it because I suck, like
this is
I struggle. I don't know if that's resonating with you, but I struggle with it.
It is, but how I can answer that, what I can offer there is tough love of, okay, then keep not setting boundaries. Keep doing what you're doing. You're not going to feel different.
How badly do you want to reach your goals?
Yeah. How many times do you have to face plant and get yourself out off the ground until you start making changes? And it's going to be once, twice, 15, 30 times. How many times do you need to be arrested? How many times do you need to be kicked out of the house? How many times do you need to look into your kid's face and, oh my God, could you imagine looking at your daughter's face and just seeing them being repulsed by you?
No, it would
Because you're
kill me.
shattered or you're violent or you're
An asshole.
an asshole, how many times is it going to take?
Mhm.
It doesn't happen overnight,
Right.
and everybody's journey is different, and
I didn't set out to lose 100 pounds and lost 100 pounds. I set out to lose 20 pounds,
You got addicted to that and you've seen the progress and you're stuck with it. It's something I just want to throw out here. What you were just saying, Mahesh, I was dealing with a family member recently and I came up with this, not coining it, but it came into my mind.
Mm.
In each of your stories that you tell, share, feel, whatever, you're not always one of two things. You're not always the hero nor the victim. If you have that mentality, you're not going to go too far in your life. I'm sorry. If you're always the hero or the victim. Sometimes you fucked up or sometimes you made a mistake. Sometimes you didn't commit fully.
Yeah.
Own it.
Own it, right?
Fucking move on.
Right. Put your ego aside.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're the first one to point out to yourself that you screwed up, God bless you. You're ahead of the game. But if you got family members pointing out to you, your friends are pointing out to you, you better start listening, or you're going to lose these people in your life, and people will be quick to discard you because they need to make choices as to what's poisonous in their lives, right? They're going to set boundaries. They're going to move on. They're going to set goals.
And yes, it's, for you, Mahesh, that's childhood trauma. That's deep pain. It's sad.
Yeah.
And we all feel really bad for you, but your significant other, and this isn't true to you, I'm just using you.
No, I got you.
She's getting a version of you that isn't helping with the dishes, isn't, enforcing things around the house, isn't contributing.
Right.
So yeah, you're becoming toxic in her life.
Exactly.
You don't mean to, but you are. So you got to take a look at that. I mean, I've had those thoughts myself when I was really down and out. I was like, my wife's going to end up leaving me for somebody better who doesn't have these issues, who actually has parents that are going to come around, who can offer more. And I'm like, what? What am I doing? Shut up. That's my punitive. I'm very aggressive towards myself, and I don't recommend that. But I'm sure that resonates to somebody. But yeah, you need to step up and handle your shit because it becomes somebody else's issue.
Now, what happens with the self-fulfilling prophecies of like, see, I knew that was going to happen. I knew you were going to reject me. I knew you were going to kick me out of the house.
That's a dangerous thing. I had this kid I used to work with, and he called me on it. If he's ever watching this, thank you. But he looked at me one day. We're on top of an elevator, and he said, "You're a self-fulfilling prophet." I got so fucking mad.
What does that even mean?
He called me on my shit. So like, this is gonna go bad. I feel like it can really go in a pessimistic or optimistic way.
Okay, so I can kind of get down with that.
No, I know you can, and I'm happy you're jumping in on that. So then when it happens, then you get all upset. You did that. You spoke that into existence.
Yeah.
You manifested that. You didn't sit there and pray and chant or whatever your flavor is on it.
But you put it into
your head.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Then it's going to attract. Again, we talked about this. I'm not going to say I'm a millionaire. Then all of a sudden, scratch. Oh my God, I won. But if I say, my wife's going to leave me, my kids are going to hate me, that can happen.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yes.
Because then you're going to start acting certain ways. You're going to look for those signs. You're going to go down those roads. But challenge that thought and, I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to beat the odds. You put that in your head, speak it into existence enough.
You'll do it.
Right. You're going to do it when you're in therapy, when you're talking with friends. You're going to change your scenery eventually. You're going to live that.
Well, this ties back to a previous episode when we were talking about faith and hope.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you have to have that spark, to get up off the ground, stop wallowing in your misery. Just stop.
I'm glad you brought that back up because I've always looked at it as faith and hope are two different things. And when I had a problem with alcohol and I ended up at a, rehab and 12-step fellowship to deal with that problem, people told me I had to find a faith to live by. I had to find faith. And not just the satanic tattoos on my body from my teenage years or, all of the terrible decisions I had made. I was placed in a position where it was incredibly challenging and difficult for you to tell me that I needed faith. I'm going to have to find something else because this isn't going to work for me. I'm not a man of faith. I don't come from a background of faith. And frankly, you're asking me to put something I don't have into, I don't believe will even work. I don't. So how can I do that? And it wasn't until somebody broke down the difference of like, well, if you can't have faith, you can have hope. And, what I was asked to do was, instead of believing this will work, just hope it will. Maybe it will. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe the voices in your head that tell you, punitive voices and all these things, maybe they are wrong.
The voices in our head are real.
That got into my head and I couldn't get it out.
Schemas. Voices in your head, your schemas, your constructs.
Yes.
So after a while of allowing myself to hope and be hopeful, and I hope this works, track record picked up. I started to get results, and now I can say the same action that I have faith in this action.
Yep.
I know this works now. So to me, faith is hope with a track record.
Makes
Faith
sense.
is hope with a track record.
Coining that.
I like that. But yeah, the voices in our head are so real sometimes that it's like, holy shit. Like some days, like not so much now, but like, when I was in the facility, I was a hot mess. I was an angry person who was very punitive towards herself. And, it was a scary place to be in. So I just feel bad that like some people, are even in that position.
To combat that, and I had, there was a guy, I talked about him before when I entered this journey. That's really the best way I can explain his journey. He had said a lot of things, and I actually got to see him the other day before I took medical leave again. And, I'd sent him the podcast, and he never answered, and I was kind of like, oh shit, like I hope I didn't offend him. I felt stupid. And then I seen him in person, and we were talking. I'm like, hey, I sent that to you. I kind of loosely dropped it in there, and he's like, oh my God, that was you texting me. I changed my phone number a lot. So he just simply didn't have my phone number.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, and we got into such a deep conversation. I felt so much human connection in that moment talking. The reason I'm bringing that up is before he and I were having a conversation at the beginning of this journey. So he had said to me, and I brought this up in a previous episode, that you have all these thoughts throughout the day. So when those thoughts start coming up, he had suggested, and I tried it, and it's proven to work for me at least, to speak out loud. And we covered that already.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if I'm having these thoughts, I can't do this, or I'm bad at that, or just whatever negative shit's going on in my subconscious that I can hear.
Yeah.
That different voice, I say out loud, no, I can do this. I'll get into fights with myself. That's talking to yourself.
Sure.
So speak it out loud. Yeah. I'm not okay.
Manifesting it.
Correct. Manifesting it. But speaking that out loud, I'm not okay. And even on days when you are okay, say that out loud. Today's a good day. Nothing's wrong. I'm safe. I'm healthy. My family's happy. I'm good. When you start having those lingering thoughts, you start ruminating, something's going to go wrong here.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to go wrong.
Okay, so a lot of people will use the faith model in Hinduism, they'll do this thing called mantras. You'll repeat a phrase, right? Rosary beads.
Mantra.
Yeah. Mantra. So, or like rosary beads, in like Catholicism,
Repetition.
right? Right, repetition. And you say this phrase enough, the belief is that you manifest it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're talking about. So from faith to hope to instilling that repetition of thought, hearing yourself, tell yourself, you're going to do okay.
Yeah.
You've got this. Life is good. Let's start on the drive to work. Let's start acknowledging what we're grateful for.
Yep.
Saying that sentence out loud, right?
Repeating what you're grateful for, it takes 2 seconds to do. Every single morning, please, whatever you do, always do 3 things that you're grateful for. Just start your day off on gratitude and end it with gratitude as well.
Right. So that
Huge.
repetition, like that mantra, and saying it out loud, it does manifest that mindset. So now you turn that maladaptive mindset into a healthy mindset because you're reconstructing how you view the world. You're reconstructing how you're going to approach problems. And now you're becoming that person that you're envisioning who you want to be.
Yep.
Getting a new set of lenses.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
you're now putting yourself in the proper places in front of the correct people. You're having the right conversations. You're allowing what you need to allow in to achieve what you're speaking into existence. I was so against therapy. Therapy sucks. They're all quacks. It doesn't work. It's, some person that went and partied their ass off at some local college, and now I'm just a textbook anomaly to them. Like it's great. But then now when I talk to people, I'm like, everyone should be in therapy.
Everybody should.
This is great. Even if I don't believe it, I try to have that approach to it.
It's a luxury that if you have the coverage in your health insurance to allow you to have 40 minutes a week, 45 minutes to an hour, where it's all about you, and you feel you're in a safe environment to start unfolding your baggage. Wow.
And not everybody has that, though, like you said, and I'm happy you did.
I never knew there was a continuum of care, that there was like that individual therapy
Right.
is like kind of the tail end of it, and that there's all of these escalations and all. I had no idea for most of my adult life.
Still though, that only covers, X amount of people. There's so many people that don't have health insurance, that don't have childcare, that don't have the means to get that help. There's still help. There's still hope. There's still something for somebody. I mean, get creative if you have to. Ideally, reach out to somebody, and that's part of this podcast is
Communication.
communication. I hope that, and it's happened a couple times, and I hope it continues to happen, because that's what drives me with this project, is people reaching out. Let's have a conversation. I'm not a professional, but I've been through my fair share of shit. And if I can't help you feel a little bit better, at least I can refer you or recommend you for the next step. I'd like to say, and it's easier because I'm not in the situation, but if I didn't have the insurance and I didn't have the support, or you name it, I just couldn't do what we're discussing right now. We live in an informational, advanced world. I mean, somebody right now who doesn't have that could probably get on a series of YouTube videos, podcasts, understand
Self-help.
the outline. Self-help, marriage counseling, whatever. Like it's all right there.
Yeah.
There's something for everybody.
I'll add to that too. In my professional life, I probably engage 80% of my time and energy in helping people that you're describing that are either uninsured or don't have a type of health insurance that has an elective for intensive outpatient or something elevated beyond individual therapy.
Do you turn them away if they don't have health insurance? What do you do with that?
No, I'm trying to plug the fact right now that, what I do is not rare, and I'm very proud to exist in a professional community here in Massachusetts, New England, and pretty much nationally, to where I'm not unique in that. We all kind of know where we came from, and we do this because it's a passion, not just a profession. So if you're sitting at home and you don't have health insurance or you don't have resources, still call any place I work at, call any place you can find on Google. There'll be people willing to talk to you and willing to point you in the right direction, even though it can't benefit them to do that.
I had heard, and I may have misheard this, but I thought the program we were in, there was some talks of like a scholarship. Is that a thing?
I would be pretty hard pressed to turn anyone away that ever reached out to me for help. If they could get to my facility and they had a desire,
right.
And this is going, permanently in the, digital airways, me saying that, like, challenge me on that, call me, ask me for help. I will help you.
Amen.
I will find help.
And so to tie this back with schemas, I mean, I think we're kind of really putting it out there, the negative schemas. I'm interested in learning now the positive ones. Again, all I know is maladaptive, but that's all I need to know right now.
That's all you need to challenge.
Well,
Yep,
right.
I
just have to challenge the good thoughts. Right. So,
Right.
I just want to kind of make this make sense again. Look, we're a real podcast. We're real people. We're talking. We're not going to sit here, as I mentioned to everybody prior, go through Webster's dictionary and say these things are all related to mental health, and we're just going to bore you all. No, we're talking.
No,
we're going to get off track. We're going to do that, especially the two ends of the table. We're going to get off track. Sorry. But to tie that all back, I mean, these things are real. They happen. And for somebody like myself, and I don't think it was ignorance, I didn't realize that maladaptive schemas were something that were affecting me so much at work, in my relationships, going in Target, going in Home Depot, how I presented myself, how I viewed, a night out at the bar with the fellas, or, going out with the wife and kids. These were things that were formed in my early years. And I'm not blaming my parents. This isn't what it's about, but, they did the best they could with what they had.
What you believed.
It's what I believe. That's what they showed me. If they told me at a young age that the sky is green and the grass is blue, that's what I know.
Yeah.
So now think about that. If you grow up, you're the only person in this world that thinks that, and you're like, oh, what a beautiful green sky today.
Yeah.
I'm going to go lay on the blue grass.
Right.
Everyone's like, what the fuck is he? What is the matter with him? Right?
Yeah.
So for you to try to unlearn that, that's notable. That's hard.
Right.
And then to relearn that and flip that around. That's how I view a schema, and I just want to circle everything back to that.
Do you think it's important to know where it came from in the process of
I don't think
challenging it and overcoming it?
Well,
I think I would just like to know personally.
Well, I
to
feel like
know,
you
but
figure that out as you kind of work through your schemas.
I'll share this. This isn't necessarily a schema. I don't think. I could be wrong. I think finally, after, a couple of years doing intense therapy, EMDR, and working on schemas, I had my therapist, he said something, and I know that we're finally on the right track. So we've talked about my panic attacks, like at Home Depot and all this running around and in traffic. There's different things that tie into that. But he had kind of offered up that maybe this is existential.
Oh.
Oh.
Whoa.
I went, like, I like to consider myself not afraid of death in the sense of I've been suicidal. And we talked about that. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be me, right?
Yeah.
That ego. When he said it, I immediately went back. Now, I share stories often, and typically I'll say, when I was 8, when I was 8, when I was 8. And I've had people call me on that, and I'm like, why do I always say back when I was 8? Even if I was 6 to 10, like it was when I was 8.
Right.
When I was 8, my mother and I went through homelessness, and her and my father had gotten back together in a very toxic way, briefly. And I remember I stumbled across a DVD that he had rented, and I was watching it, and it was AI, artificial intelligence. And from what I can remember, scarred in me, premise was this little boy, he was, his soul or whatever it was, or his friend's soul, something, got stuck in like a teddy bear. Now, again, I haven't watched the movie. I might be butchering this right now, but this is what I remember.
Yeah.
And I remember I had little teddy bears when I was a kid, and I'm looking at it, I'm like,
Is that thing going to come alive?
well, not even that. It wasn't a fear of that. It was like, I started questioning like consciousness and God and heaven and death and all this stuff at 8 years old. And it
That's very young.
Wow.
So I started becoming scared of death. And I remember that's where I landed in therapy for the first time, because I would go screaming and crying to my mother, I'm scared to get older and die. What does that mean? I'd missed school as a kid in first grade. And how do we explain that? How do we look at that? I don't think there was many resources back then as there are now.
No.
I feel like the school system would have chewed that right up and been like, let's sort that. But it kind of got kicked to the curb. I went to counseling, and then it just kind of, you're going to be fine. There's God, there's heaven. You're fine. Okay, yeah, I'm fine. But when I'm in situations like on the highway, I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like something bad's going to happen. I'll start checking my pulse. That has nothing fucking to do with the flow of traffic on the Mass Pike at 4 o'clock. Nothing. It's something I have control over. I can check. I can make sure I'm good. So when he said that it's probably existential, that comes from my childhood. I'm scared shit to face that one head on. But I think that's the final key to me, not to be okay with dying and death. My father was a mortician. I've been very much so around death.
That's your whole life.
And that's also an issue, though. But again, all these things formed young years. Information that I couldn't decipher has translated into me having a panic attack in Home Depot at 31 years old.
Yeah.
And I can't put my finger on it. Me, somebody that's a fixer for everybody, fixer for myself. I want to fix that. I'm like, well, why? I'm not scared of hammers. Never had a bad experience with a tape measure. It all ties back to that. So kind of grappling with that and understanding that, that's half the battle, though. Now you got to put the work in, and I'll keep you tuned on how that work looks.
You got this.
How many times today did you check your pulse for my driving?
It's funny though. I was right, and I said to him, typically, I'm not a good passenger, whether that's metaphorically or literally speaking. I was calm as anything with him driving, and I probably shouldn't have been. Jesus Christ.
You lived to say that you've survived.
I drive with Jeff Jason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Calm as a Hindu cow. What movie is that from? Drop it in the comment section.
Why are you looking at me?
Yeah.
It was Fight Club.
What are you getting at?
When he meets Tyler Durden on the plane, and they're looking at the oxygen, it ties into you got to put your oxygen mask on first. It's like, look at these guys. I forget. I'm butchering it now.
I'm not cutting this out.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking then.
You want to start the rap?
Yeah. Land the plane, Mahesh.
You want to do it?
You're the pilot, baby.
All right. Okay. Wow. We covered a lot of ground here. Went off on a couple of tangents, but this is the takeaway from today's episode. We create our outlook. We create our lens based on experiences that we grew up with, that we were conditioned to understand as our reality. You can change your reality, but you have to have the drive and the consistency to do it. Will it be overnight? No, it will not. Will it hurt? Yes, it will. Do you have the fight in you to do it? Do you have the fight to face your terrors? No battles won in bed. That's a recurring theme that we emphasize here. We are here for you. We want to hear from your comments. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons on your screens. Please comment on what you are experiencing in your journeys. We want to know.
And I'll add what you want to see from us. We don't have all the answers, lead us.
Yeah, please ask us questions. Please tell us what you want to see. And we will try and deliver to the best of our ability. Thanks for watching.